Hello. Hello, everybody. My name is Margaret Pinard. I'm a historical fiction author, and I'm here with another historical fiction author. Yay! Welcome.
Yay!
We're going to be talking about our buddy reading of The Coffin Path by Katherine Clements. Ta-da! So this is actually pretty special. I spurred someone else to get a book.
Yeah, I actually hadn't heard of it until I saw Margaret's video, and then I was like, "Oh, that's really interesting."
Yes. So, Christy, tell us about your channel and what you write as a sort of like background to our appreciation of this book.
Thank you. Yeah, so I write historical suspense and historical fantasy, but especially for this discussion, historical suspense taking place in Victorian era, but in America. So I do like to read suspense books from all, about all periods. So I have a lot of appreciation for the book we're going to talk about. I'm also an editor, which you can find me at proofpositivepro.com if you're looking for one. And then my channel is I do have an author channel, but I haven't done any new videos there recently. I have some plans though. But on YouTube, I do co-host a podcast with my friend David M. Kelly, who's a sci-fi author. And it's called Fun Classic Reads. So it's youtube.com/@funclassicreads. And we do live reads with guests of classic reads, exactly what it sounds like. And we may do some modern stuff too, in about 45 minutes to an hour show. So you get to meet some new authors and you get to maybe hear a classic that's out there that you've never even knew existed. We did The Survivors recently, which was classic sci-fi that most people don't know. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. So that is me. Thank you, Margaret.
Yeah. And I like what I like, and David's here. Hello, David Kelly, co-host on the channel, and Devin Gamble Clark. Hello. I know there's a whole cohort of people who are super tired because it's Storytellers Hearth Relay Weekend. So people were up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., like getting in words on live stream sprints.
Wow.
More power to anyone who is just stopping in and going to take a cat nap.
Seriously.
But yes. So, and what I love about Fun Classic Reads, besides having been a guest and having had a great old time with the costumes and the drama aspect, is that David's a sci-fi fantasy writer and you're historical with fantasy and suspense. And so you've got a lot of things to sort of pull from in terms of, your interests and your flair.
That is true. And with Margaret, we did a Jeeves read, and I have to say, you were fantastic. You really were. You were so much fun, but really good, actually. So it was wonderful.
So we both went out of our comfort zones for the era of this book. It is set in, you had the exact year, 1674?
Yeah, it was 1674.
And goes, I think, almost a year. So it's split by seasons, actually. And it takes place in the Yorkshire Moors, which is it's a lovely place that I like to go to in my imagination, being a big fan of the Brontes. But how is the setting for you coming at it as a more of an American fiction setting?
Awesome. Yeah, it was very different for me. I really don't read a whole lot of books in this time period. I mean, I do sometimes, but it's just not that common for me. And especially like on the moors, I haven't read that much taking place out there, although it's the perfect setting for creepy stuff. So and suspense. So it makes total sense. But I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. Like I said, it was the perfect setting for anything suspense or horror. And this has like not extreme horror or anything, but it has the creep factor going on. So I thought it was great. And really the author's voice is what made it for me with the atmosphere.
Nice. Yeah. So I finished this last weekend, and then I also have Patreon book club, and I finished Once There Were Wolves for book club yesterday. And I do have to say, this is a lot more graphic. So this is like gothic atmosphere, but with graphic violence. And this one is, nature thriller, but like it's just blurred. And there's also like traumatic violence in here that's also just like not a closed door, but blurred out. So they went in very different directions, which I thought was interesting when I read both of them, because they both have like scary elements, but went very different ways. David's saying David was in a Comic-Con yesterday and is also very tired. All right.
I hope it went well, David.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Thank you for the praise about the Jeeves and Worcester. That was so fun. David said, I lived on the edge of the Yorkshire Moors before I moved. Yep.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Was it
Devin,
scary? Was it as
I
scary as it
thought it was
seems?
beautiful. I bet it was beautiful.
It
Um,
probably was.
Devin would probably be a fan of the sci-fi episodes. She's a sci-fi fantasy writer.
Yeah.
And she says, you sold me on Creep Factor. So, I mean, we didn't even have to work that hard.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Okay, that's
And the
going in
sheep
a different direction, David. Um,
and the sheep are scared.
yeah, yeah. No, that's Australia. That's Australia
Yeah.
or New Zealand. So I brought some questions to this discussion because normally with a buddy read, we don't say too much as we're going through. I think we had a little bit of a Facebook message like, I got here and I got this and this is going really well, but not a lot of detail on content. So you've already said you picked it up, which is one of my first questions is like, what made you pick it up? You picked it up because I was talking about it, which is wonderful. But first impressions, like first few pages or first chapter.
Yeah, I think it drew me in pretty well. I mean, again, another topic that I don't really read that much about is shepherding, and that was a big thing in here. And the author's total knowledge of it, just in and out, perfect. I was pretty drawn into that. It moved along. I think it was at a good pace myself. So I wasn't bored even in the beginning as we were just starting to get going. The first chapter is pretty awful. I will say, like, warning animal violence. I
Yeah,
didn't realize, and I was like,
different
"Oh,
kinds
no,
of
this is
animal
horrible."
violence. Oh, yeah.
But it is very, very well written. So I think, like, for me, at least, once you get started, I thought her style really, really draws you forward.
Mm.
Easy to keep going. Did you feel that way?
Yes. No, I think I read like the first 2 pages and I had to put it down because I had like a work task to do. But I was like, whoa, okay, we're
Yeah.
jumping right in. Like, not only with the creep factor. So we have someone out alone in the moors who's taking care of the sheep. She's our main character.
Mhm.
Um, but also like the creeping evil dread. So there's definitely like some supernatural elements suggested and then, explored.
Yeah.
And there's like a stone circle and basically it's this family that's trying to stay together and make it from year to year with a flock of sheep.
Mhm.
In the aftermath, I would say maybe 15 years after the English Civil War. I don't remember the dates exactly. 68 maybe. And so that is part of the backstory and all of the characters sort of backstories, which is great. Um, what did you think of the title? Because I thought both of these books, again, I'm comparing because I read them a week
Yeah.
apart, but like the coffin path. Were you familiar with that phrase before?
I was not actually, and I looked it up immediately to find out what it was. So, like, the Coffin Path, of course, it drew me in. Once I read it, I was sort of like, I guess it was chosen more to draw us in than, anything else. I can't say that it really, like, defines the book in any way necessarily. I mean, it's in there, but it's not really the main event or anything like that.
Mm.
So once I read it, I was kind of like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, it could have taken a different name, but it
Yeah.
is very tempting to see.
I wonder if the name is for people who aren't familiar with the phrase. So the phrase is normally used in a very sort of workaday, ordinary way
Mhm,
to indicate a path that's not like a car road and it's not like a trail. It's something that's formed over centuries from very distant, desolate settlements
mhm,
to the nearest churchyard for that congregation because they would bury their dead. If it was frozen in winter, they would wait and bring them in and have burial rites and everything. And so it was frequently used because people are always dying, but it wasn't like a formal thing of the state or anything like that. But you're right. It's not very relevant to the action of the story, except that people use it all the time. And like,
yeah.
usually I'm aware of when the title is stated in a book and I'm like, oh, we came to the part where they said the title and it makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
But they just like threw it around everywhere. And I was like, okay, I guess it's just like part of life.
Yeah, 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 it does not define it at all, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just gives
So
you that good spooky feel.
yeah. So that was very cool. And then genre. So historical, yes, but different time for us, different setting for you.
Mhm.
And like what did you think of I guess like where it's placed in the genre? Where would you situate it in like historical gothic horror suspense, and maybe in relation to your books, like how would you say they differ or like are the same?
Yeah, I would not. I mean, I have heard some people refer to, my suspense books as horror. I think it's very few people. I wouldn't call them that. I
Mm.
would just call them straight historical suspense.
Okay.
And this I would definitely say is more historical horror, or gothic horror, anything like that. But horror can be included for sure. It is the point, of the book. So I would put them kind of far apart. Of course, there's a lot of really good suspense. There's a lot of small subplots that come in, like, or little mini mysteries and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
And I did enjoy that. Like, there's a lot to look forward to. And
Mhm.
there's even like three-quarters of the way, there's little things thrown in that you're saying, what is that now? There's,
Another corner, another blind corner that you turn, you're like, "Wait, is
what is
it? What is
that?
that?"
Exactly.
Good, it's good.
So I did, yeah, I feel it definitely falls into horror. It's not the kind that's like well, to me, it's not the kind that's like terrifying horror, but it's
Mm.
like creepy. I still didn't want to read it in bed, but
I wonder how far you have to go to be like terrifying horror for Christie Stratos.
it is
There's
it's it's closer to like the Ring stuff. I can't handle that.
okay, which I haven't even tried. Not going to. Not going
That's
to.
the stuff I can't take. So
Yeah. So when you say suspense, like to me, that's very close in emotion response in the reader to your first book, which I read, which
Mhm.
was like, is it like, is the truth this person's version or that person's version? And you're constantly
Right.
flipping back in the uncertainty and like you feel the creeping dread. So I
Mhm.
thought that was like one thing that was pretty similar. But yeah.
That's true. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks.
Devin saying spooky September.
That sounds
Yes.
good.
Is that a reading one? Yeah. Bring on the spook. I think I need a suspense September, adding to planner. Awesome.
I say why not?
Yeah. How about point of view? So we have third person, but we switch at sort of an interesting at interesting points, let's say. What
Yeah.
was your take on that? Because I definitely turned down the corner when we first switched POVs, and I was like, "Oh, we're moving to this guy who just showed up at the sheep farm
Mhm.
to work as a freelancer, basically. Okay,
Yeah.
what kind of view are we gonna get?" And then it was really interesting. What did you think?
Yeah, I thought so too. It goes between first person and third person, and that is not an everyday thing. So it was
Right, right, right.
yeah, yeah. So, I don't think that's difficult to switch between myself. I know some people don't like things like that, but I think it was a very easy switch. And I did think she did it at like ideal times. I was never finding myself saying, "Why are we from this perspective?"
Right,
This doesn't
right.
really, or it would have been better from the other perspective.
Yeah,
No, I thought it worked, and she didn't do too much repetition between the two, and yet she
yeah,
sometimes still covered some scenes, like specific things from a
right.
scene that were important, but without overly repeating it. So I did think it worked really well, and I was glad we got to see more than one perspective. I think it was more interesting than if we had simply stayed in the first person female
Oh, yeah,
perspective.
I
And
agree.
yeah, we see like so hers is really cool because of course, we're in the 1600s and we have a female 1600s perspective, which is very limiting, right? We're very limited. And even though she has maybe some more freedoms than others, still it's very limited. And then to
Yes.
switch into the male perspective,
Yeah.
right? Where he's a wanderer and he goes everywhere, it's the opposite. Like
Mm,
he's free, not within his soul, but he's free to go wherever he wants. So I thought that was a good contrast.
mm.
Did you think so?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way, the terms of stationary, um, and, like, freedoms, but I like that. But here's why I got this confused. So once again, I'm gonna compare here for the first chapter.
Mhm.
This is, The Coffin Path. I was born with blood on my hands.
I
So
love that first line. It was good.
right? Right in it, first
Right
line.
in it.
The other one, "When we were 8, dad cut me open from throat to stomach." So both very bloody.
Wow, yeah. I would mix those up too.
Wait a minute,
Wow.
we're in first person for both. Okay, yeah, 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 yeah.
I recently, just to throw in there, I had proofread a book recently for CamCat. It's well, I guess not so recently because I think it's out now. and Camcat Books is a publisher, and it's also historical horror. It's excellent. I wish I could remember the name off the top of my head. Maybe I'll look it up, if you're saying something, so I don't like bother everybody with it. But she also has, and it's historical horror, one
Okay.
of those like really amazing first lines that really grabs you in the same kind of way. So I wonder if it's kind of like a thing, going on in historical horror. I don't know. I don't
A
have enough experience.
genre, not condition, but a genre, convention.
Yeah, convention. That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
kind of noticed that. It's
Okay,
interesting.
if you wanna look that up, I will just, pop over to the coming attractions,
Ah,
um, announcement, because I usually do this at some point in a break. So, we have a big thing happening this next weekend. It's called the AuthorTube Writing Conference. If you haven't heard about it, have you been under a rock? So I and many others are going to be hosting and attending and volunteering for this 3-day conference, which is all free. It's all virtual on YouTube on different people's channels. But SD Houston, Devin Gambrell Clark in the chat, and I will be like, behind the scenes running to and fro to make sure everything goes well. We've got lots of fun talks and an amazing group of people presenting on topics for writing and publishing. So if you're interested, take a look at the schedule, plan out your weekend, and join us for that. As far as my channel, I've got a wrap up on Wednesday. That's my next video. So I've got some good books in there to tell people about. What about you, Christy? Next thing on Fun Classic Reads or your publishing schedule?
yeah, Fun Classic Reads. We're going to be doing, I think the next one, if you happen to be here, David, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the next one is July 11th, which is a Thursday. And we're going to be doing The Count of Monte Cristo. We may be doing a screenplay like adaptation kind of thing so that it flows better within our approximately half hour that we do, the reading, and then the rest of the time is spent talking and discussing and stuff like that. So we'll be doing The Count of Monte Cristo because it's Alexander Dumas' birthday month. So I thought it was kind of the perfect time.
Perfect.
Yeah, and then for me, I'm just getting back to writing. I just had a lot going on in the past, few months. So I'm just getting back to writing now, and it's exciting for me, but I will need a little bit of lead up. So I'm not promising like any dates,
Right.
but I'm still writing Prohibited Magic. I had to leave that off a few months ago
Mhm.
because of changes to Kindle Vella and some other things going on. So I will be getting back to that. And David says, yes, July 11th. Okay, thanks for confirming just in case.
I saw your
Yeah.
announcement that you had finally made it through changing all the episodes. I can't remember where, if it was a newsletter or Facebook, but I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh my god, it's like the admin project from hell. You
I
finally
know. It
well
was I couldn't believe it. I thought it was gonna take so much less time. 101,000 words I had to split into between 600 and 900 word episodes. It was miserable. It was awful. That was
yeah,
all because they changed it so I wouldn't be making the money that I should be making off of it. They made that change and it was a really ugly one for people like me who write long episodes for Vella. So,
right,
I had to fix it or else what was the point? It was like
right.
such a waste.
It just feels like, I don't know, like when you're baking and you have different, measurements and you have to pour them back in, and then your mind is
Yeah.
messed up because now you have to, like, change the adaptations of the measurements, and it's just like,
That's it, that's it, yeah, that's exactly what I was like, "Oh my god," so that was a nightmare, finally it's over. I did that with the first 2 books, and then with Prohibited Magic, I was like, "It's as is, and I'm just gonna go forward," from
yeah,
there, but,
I think it's
yeah,
great.
so
It's a
finally
good
that's
for
over.
experimentation, so
Mm,
well, all
I
that
feel
experience you garnered from life.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
like, "No, no,
I
thank
just
you."
count that as maturity and learning, right?
Yes. Okay, so back to the book. I've got some more questions, but as I said in the scroller below, feel free to pop in questions if you're curious about any aspects we're talking about.
Oh,
Um,
and before we move on, let me just mention, since we were talking about first lines, I did find that book that I was
yes.
talking about. It's called Sanctuary by Valentina Cano Repetto. And it is out now. And the first line that I wanted to read, this is 1596. And it goes between 1596 and I believe it was the 1930s. So it
Mm.
starts at 1596 and it is, I dipped the silver spoon into the steaming dark liquid and filled it with death. So like we have lots of great first
Wow.
lines.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, Sanctuary by Valentina.
Yeah, it was.
Put it in the
Sorry.
chat.
Valentina Cano Repetto.
Close enough.
It's a really good read. Really good read.
Awesome. Yeah, and speaking of first lines, Devin was saying, "Whoa," when I read that first line, cut to the
Yeah,
chase.
it's a good
Yeah,
one.
exactly. And we had
Yeah.
it just Eva in the chat, and then we were talking about Fun Classic Reads next on July 11th. David saying, "How dare they, Kindle Vella?"
I
Adrian
know.
coming over from hosting Go Wendy Now. Hello, hello. And then the reference for anyone who wants to look it up, and hopefully Google will correct for the spelling of the author's name
You
if
got
I
it right. You got it right.
all right. Okay, so what about here's something fun that I do whenever I read a book. 278. Then he squeezes his eyes tight shut, a wail erupting from somewhere deep inside, a noise I've never heard from him before, more akin to the keening of foxes in the night. And I was like, keening. Every time I come across the word keening, I go, ooh, yay, because like it's not a word everyone knows, but it's
Yeah.
literary. So you find it in books a lot. And I'm always like, I want to do some sort of project that's like, look, my book is called The Keening and it's here.
That's a cool idea. Oh, I love that. It's
No
a good
idea.
idea.
Is there any word that when you run across it in a book, you go, "Oh wow, I love that word," but you're always like, surprised. Or
Mm.
like you don't see it in normal text, and you're like, "Ah, historical word, yes."
Ah, boy. Oh, that's a tough one. I do like running across words that I'm not familiar with, and that especially happens when I'm reading about a culture that is not something I'm super into myself, you know? So, this like shepherding stuff, wow, I know a lot of things I will never need again. But, those kinds of words are just interesting to me, I can
Mhm.
say. But yeah, I can't say that there's like a particular word. It's kind of an interesting project you've come up with though. Imagine like
No,
gathering all those sentences and that's kind of cool.
yeah.
I
So I
like
just
the
wondered
idea.
if anyone had a similar thing, but it's not. It's fine. I can be alone in that. I realize
I
probably.
know there are people who are very much more like, word focused than I am in terms of loving specific words and
Mhm,
stuff like that.
yeah. How about within the genre? Are there specific tropes that stood out or things that made it more predictable to you? Like that was like, oh, this is directly situating it in the genre. Like this is leading me to think this, or we
Mm.
definitely have supernatural and some other things. Do you want me to
Yeah.
put the spoiler thing up so we can talk about some of the other like mini plot things or
We could, yeah, just to be
okay, we'll do
safe.
that just to be safe. You can come
Just
back later, but you can mute us for a bit.
I would say, a lot of it followed, like, what you expect of a ghost story and what you typically see in movies and books, in terms of a ghost story. It's always, like, this sort of crescendo of, haunting, and I can't say it delivered anything new in that way. It was what I would expect and nothing more than that, really. So, like, repeated noises, feeling like there's someone behind you, the coldness, feeling like there's someone breathing on your neck, all that kind of stuff, and, things disappearing, things moving, things being pushed off tables, you
The
know.
creepy fire guard or whatever, smoke.
Yes, the fire
Oh,
guard, that
that's creepy.
reminded me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that actually reminded me even of some of the horror that includes dolls and things like that,
Yes, definitely.
yeah,
Good
exactly.
take on it. Mhm,
'Cause the eyes, and he
mhm.
was kinda, like, partially looking real and partially not, is that creepy fire thing. So, I can say that it falls exactly into what you expect of a ghost story, and there wasn't anything surprising to me
Yeah. Okay.
in that
We
way.
had, like, questionable identity and, like, blank pasts and people who don't tell
Yes.
anything about their past, so, like, that was a sort of, "Oh, okay. He's on a mission. He's got
Yeah.
a vendetta, like, this is where it's going," kinda thing. Did that jump out
Mhm.
to you or
The closed lips thing, nobody's gonna say anything, nobody's gonna speak about their own stuff, like their own past or what they've done and things like that. Yeah, we all know that that's going to lead somewhere particular, particularly ugly, I suppose we could say. So, yeah, that did register with me as well.
yeah, there was one part where I was like, "Okay, okay, I get it. You're laying it on a little bit thick." Um, I don't know if I'm gonna hit the right page now, but let's see if it's this one. Oh yeah. Um Volunteer for the night watch. It seems he has no thirst tonight either. For a brief moment, I'm tempted to go to him to tell him the full scope of my worries. I long to confide in someone, and he's so closed and silent. I'm sure he would not repeat my secrets. But no, I must shoulder this alone. And I'm like,
That's so
it's
true.
like written out that this person is like, maybe I should communicate. Oh,
Yeah.
nope. Let's keep this to myself because, that would endanger the plot.
Yeah. That was the theme, and it's the kind of thing that drives me nuts. It's like having misunderstandings in romance.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just
yeah.
one of those
Almost
things you
there.
either like or you hate, you know? But,
Yeah.
yeah, that kind of thing would happen, and it would also cause other people to shut down when one person won't open up, and you're kinda like, "Well, you could have talked it out and had more
Right.
answers, but you
Yeah.
chose not to," you know? It is
Yeah.
yeah, that can get frustrating at times.
Yeah. Um, I don't think there's
True.
anything else that's like tropes that are spoilers. Um,
I don't think there's a whole lot of I mean, it had, like, it doesn't have, like, crackling sexuality, but it does have, a fair amount of stuff in it, sexually
yeah,
that, between what you have that's kind of what she has that's more violent and what she wants, which would be more loving, and equal and stuff like that. So, that was one of those also kind of the sexual aspect of it
yeah,
that once I kind of saw like what the relationship she was in, well, really, let's put that in quotes,
yeah,
relationship that she
really,
was
really,
in. I
yeah.
was like, okay, well, I can see where this is headed. We can all see where this is headed with this
I
stranger.
think you don't see where it's headed yet, but
Uh-oh.
finger off there because Chrissy hasn't finished the book. How many pages do you have left?
I'm like 3/4 or more of the way through
Okay,
it.
I think it like some signals are given in the last quarter, so I'll leave that for you to find. What about cool historical scenes? Because one of the ones that I found, I have read books about shepherding actually, so like
Okay,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
pretty familiar. But there's one guy who wrote a shepherding life, and it's actually him trying to like make a living out of it as a
Mhm.
third generation farmer, or whatever. And now, and so he was like going
Mm.
through these things, but I had never had such a graphic description of like neutering of a
Oh,
sheep.
yeah.
Like that was um, and the one scene that I thought was really cool is at one point they're out in the snow looking for the sheep because the snow is just dumped,
Yeah.
and they're trying to save them because you can survive if you're grouped together with a bunch of sheep because you can have body warmth under the snow, but only for like a day. So they had to like find any and shepherd them into the warmth while they could. So they're out in this snowstorm and it's terrible. And what they did was they used their crooks to like pierce through the snow where they knew there might be like little holes full of sheep
Mm.
taking shelter. And I was like, wow, you really have to know your land well to be like, oh, I know this hill goes down about 10 feet. There might be some sheep taking shelter there. Let me see if I stick my crook down and something moves. Like I was like, that's cool. I thought that was neat.
That is a good one. That's a particularly good one.
I
Yeah,
don't know
they
what
did
about
know their land so well, and there was even other weather that was less than that where, they were saying how easy it is to get hurt. And, if you just
fog.
with the hot yeah, the heavy, heavy fog and not being able to really see where you are, you could break your back out there and just slipping on the wrong thing. So that was I can't imagine knowing, such a wide, amount of
Yeah,
land
yeah, yeah.
that well. Wow. And quickly too, because the new guy also, was able to figure it out.
Right. Wasn't even from
Fast.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Hello, Elena. Welcome. And Jim came in. Jim's books reading and stuff. Hello, hello. Devin says there's always that one trope that that makes you want to pull your hair out.
Yeah.
Historical shepherding books. I grew up with modern sheeping. What? No,
Oh, cool.
that's so cool.
Get ready
Yeah,
for some sheep tragedies, though, if you're gonna read this, so if
yeah,
you're
well,
not okay
yeah,
with
you
that.
might listen to this. I mean, I think if you grow up with modern sheeping, or I guess that's what it's called, you're probably like pretty inured to found one that the crows got, or found one that fell off a cliff. I saw sheep
Mm,
skeletons when I visited Scotland, the last
appreciate you.
few trips because there's just so many and they roam free, and like that's just the way it goes. So
Mhm.
I was like,
Yeah.
bones, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm always a huge fan, I guess, kind of in most books of, kitchen scenes and, in every, like, historical era, and
Mm.
so in this one, we it's not like, those kinds of scenes are very heavy or anything, but I did like every time they were, in the kitchen and we heard, more about what Agnes, who is you can't call her she's like a what'd you call her? She's not a maid or a housekeeper, she's a permanent part of the house
I would
taking
say she's the housekeeper, but
I
she's also
guess so. I feel like she's more important than that, but I
yeah,
guess
yeah. Housekeepers are
it's
important.
yeah, that's true, that's true.
She's like the
But
only servant there, so, like, she's,
yeah.
like, rules everything.
Yeah, 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 big
Yeah.
big deal, but yeah, when she was going about her business, and we got to hear some of what she's making, some of the there was this particular drink I'm sure that you were familiar with, it sounded really like, "I wanna try it." It starts with a C.
Coddle.
That's it. Yeah, that's the one,
And it's like
and,
a kind of like a hot toddy, like, it's
yeah, yeah, and
but
it sounded so nice with the, natural herbs that they had. I've
mhm.
never tried it. So are you saying it's not too good?
I would imagine it'll be weird for modern tastes
Mm,
'cause
yeah,
I'm trying to think if there's,
like a
like
modern equivalent.
no, 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 like, one of the things that I looked up was that, Samhains so one of the things that they would have in Scotland is something called Samhains, which is like oatmeal juice, and they would,
Okay.
like, put that into drinks to hearten it up or whatever, and
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, "Oatmeal thickener in a drink of juice," like, it just like, the modern mind boggles, so
It
I
is
don't know.
different, yeah.
It could be really good, I can't,
There were
wrap
these, like, herbs, like, there was some flower, like lavender, they had a lot of lavender out there, and so there was, like, lavender and honey and something out like, a couple other things,
yes.
and so it sounded like one of those just nice comforting types of things,
Mhm.
to me, and, I just love those kinds of things, even if
Yeah.
they're very simple, just
Mm.
hearing basically what they're feeding themselves, what they survive on during, lean times, which is typically the same through most cultures, but still, I like to hear it. So, I did enjoy those scenes a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I like how exactly on lean times, how you survive and how that's different for every locality. Um,
Mhm.
I like that too. The kitchen
Yeah.
kitchen witch magic.
Could you imagine yeah, that's right. Oh, witch, be careful. Be
Yeah.
careful. We're in
Um,
1674.
yes. Well, yeah, it's like witching times for sure. Um, let's see. Creep factor is my next question. On a scale of 1 to 10 creeps, how many do you give this one?
For me, I couldn't read it in bed, but I could read it, like, at night as long as I wasn't if I was, like, on my couch, like, I could read it there
Same.
and I had some time before bed, I could do
Mm.
that. So, I would give it a good 5 for me,
Yeah, I
maybe
was gonna say
5?
6, maybe 5. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's not scary. Like, it's not scary, it's creepy.
It definitely has the, sort of, like, minor chord tension that they're always pulling with that
Mhm.
whole, like, I can feel someone's eyes on the back of my neck sort of
Yes.
repeating,
Yeah,
um,
that's
but it
right.
does give you, like, breaks where, like, things appear normal or things appear solved or things appear less mysterious, but then it goes back to, like, where what are we doing? What is this force kind of thing? Uh,
Yeah,
so it
and so
keeps
to some degree yeah, some of the characters or maybe yeah, occasionally a character would kinda, like, get used to, let's put that in quotes a little bit, get used to some of what's going on, and I'm thinking of, this isn't like a spoiler because it starts pretty early on, but there's sounds of footsteps, very, very common ghost type of thing, and, I think it was Ellis, who hears them at some point and is kind of like, "I know who somebody else thinks is up there. It's not. Nobody's up there." He's kind of just
uh,
in a way getting used to it, and that's also kind of oh my, imagine getting used to hearing things like that. I wouldn't like that too much, yeah.
just being certain that it's evil at work rather
Yeah,
than a
yeah. You no
terrestrial
longer yeah, you
yeah.
no longer say, "Oh, it must be Sam up there. It must be Agnes up there." No, you're like, "Nobody's up there and I know it. I don't even have to check."
Da, da,
You know?
da.
Yeah, exactly. How
Good,
much
it's
worse is
well
it gonna get now?
yeah. Um, so Anita says oatmeal thickener and apple juice might be okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's certain pairings that I can feel more are
Yeah.
more familiar, right? David says, used to go up on the moors as a kid. There are lots of little streams running, and we'd drink from them. Did this once and followed the stream and found a sheep rotting in the stream we'd drunk from.
Oh no! Oh
Oh,
my
it was downstream.
god!
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Have you survived?
Gross. Yeah,
Happy you're
totally.
here. Oh.
Is there a homage to Emily Bronte, Wuthering Heights, or Daphne du Maurier, Jamaica Inn? So I read Wuthering Heights a long time ago. I don't remember if I finished it because I'm pretty sure I threw it across the room. And I haven't read Jamaica Inn yet. I have it. I believe I have it, but I haven't read it yet. Do you know either of these? Like,
I could not say off the top of my head. I mean, some of the creeping. I mean, Jamaica Inn. I almost just watched the movie and did not watch the movie, so I wish I had, so I could tell you whether I agreed with that. I know the movie is going to be different from the book, but I just so happened to be. But on the back, it's funny you should say that because on the back of the book, there's a quote from Andrew Taylor saying, "Wonderful Yorkshire Gothic, like something from Emily Bronte's Nightmares." So you made me think of that, that quote.
yeah.
So it's
I
some classic stuff.
will say with the Emily Bronte comment, there is definitely some commonality to the themes asserted there in terms of vengeance and I won't say toxic relationships because that sounds too modern, but like twisted relationships and everything. So yes, and I can't say any more because I don't want to spoil it. It says no upstream. Oh, gross.
Oh boy.
Ugh, lots of scenes on the moors.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
definitely
Yes.
in all weather. It was great. I liked it.
It was. It was really good.
My last question is, was the end satisfying? Which you can't tell me.
I tried so hard to get there. I'm sorry, guys. I'm a slower reader, and I had other things come up, unfortunately. So
yes, I can say that I definitely thought the end was satisfying, and that the signs were pointing to it. I sort of could tell where it was going by the little hints, and the the people who die in the making of that ending are like, okay, all right, that makes sense. And the whole like Wheel of Fate type deal, like I'm okay with that. It seems appropriate, is what I told Christy beforehand. So she's gonna finish and then let me know what she thinks and whether she was right.
Ooh.
Being a little devilish here. So yeah, there's witch stuff in here.
There is some.
Yeah. There's definitely a ghost story and there's definitely supernatural. What else do you think like would be good for people to know about this besides the content warnings of like animal violence and well, I guess that's it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I do like. Okay, I don't think you have to put a warning on everything, but if it's going to be this much, I do think there should be a little, just a little something,
Yeah.
for those of us who can't take it.
Yeah.
It's just a
I
reminder.
did when I came to a part with the dog. I was like, "Do I tell Chrissy about that, or is that going to make her stop reading? Is she going to be upset by it?" And I was like, "I think the way that it's phrased, like, I definitely knew it was going to happen, and so, like, I think you would have been able to like prepare and been like, okay, that's definitely like an indication." And then,
Yeah.
like, the scene was pretty gruesome, but it's the ghosts. What are you going to do?
I know. What are you going to do? Exactly. Right. Yeah. Did you find, I have one question. Did you find any of the creep factor to be too repetitive without necessarily forward motion with it?
Oh, I had a question about red herrings, I guess, which was a little bit about that. I've had a few books lately where by the time I get to the last, 50, 60 pages, I feel like they're doing extra twists and turns that I really sort of have built up momentum and I want to speed to the end. And they don't satisfy that urge of like speeding up in the pace at the end. But I didn't get that feeling reading this book. So when I got to the end, it wasn't like, oh, that was a wrong assumption and here was another wrong assumption and it was too many. It was like we got where I thought we were going and the rest is silence in like the Hamlet language. So Repetitive creepiness.
Yeah, it wasn't like at times I was kind of on the fence about whether the like feeling someone watching you was kind of mentioned often enough that it became a little blasé. I was
Mm,
kind of on the fence of that, and that's like one of those risks that horror authors take. I've seen it happen before where an atmosphere or an ambiance becomes so dragged out that it's dull. You know what I mean? It's not scary anymore. It's not even interesting anymore. That's not what happened here. But I'm just saying I've actually seen that happen.
mm,
And I don't think it went that far, but I did start to think like kind of, can we have something else or maybe just skip that part or something. I don't know. We've already heard it so many times, kind of,
yeah, yeah,
a little, but not bad or anything. Not in a way that I would say, "Oh, I don't know if you want to read this." No, it was still very good.
yeah. It's 375 pages, so like
Mhm.
I don't know, like medium, a little bit on the long side of medium, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit long.
Yeah, I wouldn't pick I wouldn't pick on that as one of the things. Um, oh, one of the things we said early on was that it was a very visceral book. So along with this is everyday sheep, this is like a working farm, there's things going on. Like we were pointing to the fact that I'd been to 5 chapters and like people had peed 3 times and it was described and I'm like, "Why are we seeing so much peeing? Like what is this?" So
It was a lot.
that was a little repetitive because it was noticed and
Yeah.
commented on. So I was like, "What is that?" But, yeah,
I
author
think, so many times yeah, I think sometimes authors try so hard to make things real that sometimes they don't realize how many times
yeah,
something happens. It's just kinda like, "Okay.
yeah.
Alright.
Editor,
Whatever."
editor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh, so David doesn't agree with content warnings. I don't know, like, especially if people are in a specific situation, I would say that they're useful for upsetting the relationship between author and reader. That's my
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I there are certain they're very okay, so Dave, just to clarify, there are only very specific things that for me, like, I wish there was one, but I don't know if there really should literally be one. I guess I don't like reading books with stuff with animals like that happening, animal violence.
Yeah.
I don't like it, and if I knew it, I probably would not have read it, but then again, I got through it and I read it and it was a very good book. So, I mean,
Mm,
luckily I don't have trauma about that, so it didn't cause me to go into some kind of terrible, trigger thing, but, yeah, I kind of am always like this with trigger warnings, not really sure 100%. I get why some people want them, you
right,
know.
right. That's why I don't look for them because I don't think there's anything that I would come across that would make me, um that would harm me. There's definitely
Mhm,
stuff, what was there another book? It was an older, like, classic female author mystery, and I was reading it. Oh, By Firelight by Edith Pargeter, and it had, like, I don't know, a third of the way through, and there was an incest plot, and I was like, "Nope, put down." Like, I don't
mhm.
need to read that, like, so
Yeah, sometimes you just stop, like, if you
yeah,
just come
I'm like
across it, and you're like, "I
it
can't do
didn't
that."
upset me, but I was just like, she's really getting into the minds of this." And I'm like, "I don't wanna go there, so we're done."
Yeah, sometimes you just don't want it. Yeah, that's right.
JD's here, late as hell to the party, but such is moi. I love it. Arrived in time to hear it's visceral,
Well, that's
great
what you need to know.
word. Yes. One guess to what their fetish is. Well, did you look up any Katherine Clements' other work before we started? Because I
I just
hadn't done that,
remember.
and then I was like, "Oh, we should see if she does other stuff in this vein or whether this is just a one-off."
She has, 2 things that look like they're part of a series, The Painted Chamber and The Crimson Ribbon. Those are the and then I see
Okay,
something else called The Silvered Heart.
Silvered Heart. So it sounds like historical fantasy, maybe also ghost stories?
Could
Maybe
be, yeah.
graphic, violent ghost stories, like, that might be her thing.
Oh, it's short stories, The Painted Chamber is short stories.
Okay,
Okay.
cool. Because 'Cause I'm definitely thinking of, like, scary stories to tell in the dark, like, this
Yeah,
definitely
yeah. Oh, another one, Crimson Ribbon, 1646, so we're still in the same
okay.
era.
Before the Civil War. Alright, alright. JD is saying, I think going forward, I will include warning or rating on his books.
Have you gotten reviews, JD? If you happen to mention, have you gotten reviews where that makes you think that, or is it just because you want to?
That's the thing. If there's something in a book you don't like, put it down. But
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
pretty
have
good.
those experiences that might trigger me. Like,
Mm,
I haven't been through something, and I just respect that people who are trying to read and have a good time, there may be like one thing that if they read it, like they're set back for half the day because they're in a panic mode and then they can't concentrate and then they have migraine. Like that's a thing. So yeah, just
yeah.
be, yeah, you're not forced to continue. Devin says, content warnings. I didn't feel I needed to add them for my book, but I definitely needed them for The Power. That's the Naomi Aldred. I can't remember her last name. Did not like that book and would not have picked it up. Interesting.
That's the thing when you like would not have picked something up, and if it affects you, it's like it's difficult. But
Yeah.
it never used to. I don't even know when. I don't even know when this discussion started. The whole trigger warning thing. Maybe with the internet, or something, some Goodreads or something like that. I don't know, but I mean, in college we had to read some things that some people thought were pretty disturbing, and you just get stuck with it. I mean, you just get stuck.
Yeah. JD makes a point. It's also the job of the blurb or like the back cover copy to be
Yeah,
clear. Tone
that's
and
true.
content. Yeah. What was I reading?
I definitely did not realize based on the blurb that there would be all this animal violence.
Yeah.
Nothing made me think that.
I can't remember what I was looking at, but the front was like it was a mismatch of like expectations of genre and story.
Yeah, even based on like the back of the book, I don't even think you know that it's going to be about shepherding. Like when I started, I was like, we're in the middle of, what is this? What's happening? I mean, obviously it didn't take me long to figure it out, but I was just kind of like, I don't remember that being in the description,
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
cover art. Yeah.
Also cover art, a good indicator. Yeah. Devin says my book is dark fantasy. I felt it was self-explanatory. I did add them though. Yeah. Could help. Uh,
Mm,
JD says, I haven't gotten reviews or comments, but see the value if I do something way dark.
mhm.
Like the second book, Shadow of a Human, which I was just reminded is the darkest of the trilogy from your Go Indie Now interview. Or go to somewhere really dark. Yeah. Yeah, I brought in Hamlet, so Jim's continuing the Hamlet theme. Thank you, Jim.
That is the question.
Problem for me is that you can't possibly anticipate what might be a trigger for everyone. Anything can trigger someone. So you think of the things that are most traumatic for significant groups of people, like sexual assault, like
Mm,
family trauma, like violence to children or animals,
yeah.
and that's probably like the most important, I would say. Yeah. JD says also odds are huge. I'll never include rape scenes, animal cruelty, and such. But I do have several stories in Spanish where kids don't do well. 2 stories in my Spanish short story collection. Huh. All right.
Yeah.
Speaking of that question, BRB. I am mystified. All right. Yeah.
That
Wow.
is true. You can't predict everything. It's yeah, the ones that occur to me are the ones that Margaret mentioned. Those are the ones that I don't blame authors for putting up.
Right. So I had someone eating while reading Shadow of a Human. They didn't finish their lunch. Actually, 2 people said the same. Kind of enjoy being lunchtime company. Nice. Nice. Oh, gotcha. Okay, that's why you had I see, I see. So yeah, so she's got short stories. Are you a short story reader? Is that something you might pursue?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
picked up at this bookstore, so I feel like I wouldn't normally have gone for this, as it's billed as a, like, horror suspense, but, the Coffin Path was, like, historical, and it was Northern Britain, and those are, like, my sweet spots, and so I was like,
Yeah.
"Well, okay, I'll try it," and, so that's why I picked it up, but yeah.
It's a good one. It is, even though I haven't made it to the end still. I'll get there probably today or
Yeah,
tomorrow.
the next week. You can tell me probably around the time of the AWC, and then I'll, like, not see it.
Yeah, then you'll not see it.
Jim says warnings were intended to alert traumatized people who had experienced rape and sexual or physical assault that
Yeah.
soon to be presented material might spark their traumatic memories. Yeah, and I think that's where it's appropriate.
Yeah.
Try to do no harm. Yeah. I don't think I have to do that in any of my books. Like I do have a beating, I do have like death, and grief and conflict, obviously, because it's a novel. But yeah, I don't think there's anything specific enough or graphic enough in mine that would require it. So I haven't put anything in.
Yeah, I haven't put anything on mine. I did have one person suggest for anatomy to put a warning about child abuse. I haven't. I was listening with open ears. I haven't heard anybody else suggest it. Like my ears.
Yes.
I haven't heard anybody else suggest it. Nobody has said they've been disturbed by it, and so I kind of remained on the fence unless I heard other people say that it like triggered them or disturbed them or something. I can understand where that person is coming from, but I also hesitated because I don't show that much
Bit of a
like
spoiler.
direct,
Yeah.
physical stuff. It's not. So I haven't.
Yeah. It's yeah, it's funny because sometimes people use tropes as marketing phrases like secret baby trope or something like this, and I'm like,
Mhm.
that's the one I want to stay away from. I hate that as a trope. But like if that was like something that like triggered you for some reason, then I would be like, well, then you gave it away and now they're gonna be looking who's having the baby like the whole time in the book. It's
Yeah.
just a hard thing, but
I feel that romance readers are like a whole other romance is like a whole other thing. Like romance readers want to know. I
yeah.
want to read the secret baby. And so I'm looking for that, and it works for them. It seems to be the best idea. They're all doing it now, and the right readers seem to be attracted. So for them, it's good. And for people like us, I think it's more like the historical aspect. Like, what are we talking about here? Is there suspense? Is there mystery? Something like
Right.
that you might want to put in like that second half of the title as description.
Yeah.
That can be interesting to our readers, but not so much Secret Baby.
Yeah. I think I think with historical fiction, you're doing so much laying in of context and setting. It feels more like supported rather than
Mhm.
something that comes out of nowhere and could be like, oh, I wasn't
Mhm.
expecting that. I think you will probably be led to expect what's happening in a
Yeah.
historical fiction. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
That's just my thinking right now. I don't know. I haven't
I
thought it
mean,
through.
you can expect at least the basics of most things. You know what I mean? There's always going to be a possibility of almost everything. So it's, hard old times.
David says, I don't write anything that's especially graphic or brutal. I tend to leave that off camera as I feel it's more effective that way rather than being over the top or gratuitous. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I can
I appreciate
appreciate that. Yeah.
JB, when I include violence, it is pretty graphic.
The opposite end of the spectrum.
Right? Yep. Devin says, it makes me want to check my Harry Potter books for content warnings. It gets really dark towards the end. Yes, it does.
Interesting. That's an interesting topic, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Dave, we'll try not to do that for you.
Yeah. Anita says, I have many triggering things in most of my books. The Hayward and
Mhm.
Anderson series is pretty tame, though. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd call it the tamest of your series.
Yeah. Same. And in the Sarah Paretsky novel I'm reading, Bodywork, the suspect is an Iraq war veteran with PTSD. Yeah, that would be another one I would put in there, maybe.
Mhm.
Mm.
I have seen some people wanting trigger warnings about things that happen that ruin the ending, though, and that also gets tricky.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah,
protect the reader or do you protect the ending? And it's like
yeah,
it's real tricky.
yeah.
It's a
I
good
think we're
thing.
using the term in a mocking way here.
Just a little bit.
Kim says Shakespeare's Titus Andronicus was quite graphic.
Mm.
This was just in a poll. I think Martha from Self Righteousness said, which is the best Shakespeare to adapt if Quentin Tarantino was the director and Titus was the one that won the poll, obviously. Yeah, I haven't seen it. I just know it by reputation. So, yeah, the bloodiest of Shakespeare's plays. I don't know if there is much of a plot, just everyone gets hacked to pieces.
Perfect.
Right? Check that one off the list.
Ideal.
Uh, um, So yeah, that's all the questions I had. We sort of went off on a little tangent, which is fine because we're both interested in like the craft of writing, which is great.
Mhm.
If no one else has questions about the book in the comments, we can wrap it up and have a lovely rest of the day for everyone on this lovely weekend. Whoops,
Mm.
I just found comments. The
Yeah.
past was pretty violent, so I expect that when I read those books. That's definitely
That's a really good point. I also feel that way about historical fiction. It's harder to shock me with historical fiction.
yeah, that's a good point. Modern romance, some of those need warnings. Yeah.
You know, when you get into, like, the dark romance stuff, most of those authors that I've seen have warnings. I can't say most of those authors, a number of those authors that I've seen have
Mm,
warnings, and some of them are really necessary,
yeah.
but that's a whole other thing. It's like
Well, I
just
mean,
really sexual
yeah,
stuff.
I guess would you expect to have certain things in a book? I wouldn't. Book that I
Yeah,
would read and enjoy, but, like, maybe the cover's really pretty, and so
yeah.
I go into it, and I don't know that, there's these terrible things happening, and then
This
I've
is
just wasted the money because 'cause I'm, like, never gonna
yeah.
read that. Yeah.
I did a genre study. It was funny because I don't remember how I got on this, but I, did a genre study of, mafia romance, and I was thinking, because I was, like, I innocently wandering and thinking, "Oh, I wanna write, like, a 1950s romance that includes, like, the crime, noir type of stuff," and I did this study of mafia romance and was shocked at what is in there. I
Right.
was like,
What is
"This is
grouped in
not
there?
what I
Because it's
meant."
kind of an odd collection, right?
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
was I was like, "Never mind, that's not what I meant. It's a totally
yeah.
different genre that I'm writing here." It's just not
Yes.
the same.
Agree. Agree. More Hamlet quotes, twisted, erotica trigger warning, contains copious amounts of Hawk and I don't know what that means. You said that earlier in a previous chat, and I don't know what that means. So, the Bible should come with trigger warnings. Yeah. Genital mutilation and others. Yeah.
Yeah.
uh, Devin's just laughing. Got it.
Look it up, he says. Oh boy. Well, that's our homework.
In a private browser so that it
In a
doesn't
private
someone I read something recently that said, oh, it was a writing thing from Barbara Kingsolver, and she's talking about writing about sex in books and how it's this weird, like, we don't do it. It's not literary. Women can't do it. Only men can in a certain way. And then she used some of these words and she's like, look it up. And I was like, in a private browser.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Everything recorded.
I don't wanna know the advertisements that would happen if you didn't use it.
Exactly. And like the Amazon suggestions and all that stuff. So just, no,
Oh, no.
leave your ID at the door.
Yeah.
Um, well, thank you, Christy, for coming on and reading The Coffin Path with me. I will look
Thank
forward to
you.
your thrilling conclusion and what you thought of the ending.
I will
Um,
probably pin you into another buddy read because that was fun, and it made me read
yeah,
faster, so that was nice.
that'd be great. And she saw me talk about this book when I was going through different eras on my bookshelf.
Mhm.
So if you're curious, there's like 40 something books on 18th century and before, 19th century and 20th century. And I need to read my way through them. So if you go back and find that, you can probably hit me up for a buddy read of one of those. Um, Otherwise, I'm very excited that I finished this and I appreciate it. It's a great story. So well done, Katherine Clements, a name in my
Mhm.
brain for later. And yeah, um, AWC this weekend and fun classic reads in a couple weeks
July
and
11th.
July 11th. Thanks for coming by to watch, and I hope it was a fun discussion. Thanks everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming.